Good morning and welcome to our workshop on going electric with your fleet. Pioneering fleet managers around the world are exploring alternatives to internal combustion engines. The benefits to bus riders and their communities of an electrified fleet are undeniable. We heard about some of those benefits yesterday in our workshop on climate change. Electric buses are much quieter than their diesel predecessors, cheaper to maintain, and they don't leave behind the black clouds that are standard in many of today's public transit routes. Challenges such as funding, infrastructure, and scheduling charging times will still need to be overcome to achieve a greener fleet. We have a unique opportunity this morning to hear from two of our transit agencies in Missouri. We have Dale Schaefer, the Director of Product Development for Metro Transit in St. Louis, and Matt Crawford, the Transit Director of City Utilities of Springfield, and they're going to be talking about the opportunities and challenges around electrifying your bus fleet. So we're going to kick it off today. I'm going to ask Matt to start by talking a little bit about your organization, the size of your fleet, why you're thinking of going electric, and what's behind that decision. And then we'll turn it over to Dale for a little background on what they're doing at Metro Transit, along with his counterpart, Chance Baragary. Did I get that right, Chance? I'm sorry. And then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt right now for just a little bit of background on what City Utilities is doing in Springfield. Matt?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for inviting me to participate on this conference. City Utilities is a municipal electric, gas, water, telecommunications, and transit organization in Springfield, Missouri. Currently this year, we're celebrating our 75th anniversary. And Transit's excited to have been one of the original power providers in Springfield. And that's part of what brought Springfield's electric and transit systems together. Currently, on an average year, we run about 1.3 million total miles and around 1.3 million passengers. Our mission at City Utilities is to responsibly serve our customers and community beyond their expectations. Currently, we have 27 fixed route buses and 6 paired transit buses. We have two electric buses on order through Gillig, and we expect them to be delivered next April. And we will, at that time, we'll be trading off three buses in that process. During our last triennial, the MPTA asked us to reduce our spare ratio, so that's going to be a function of this process. One of the reasons we are pursuing electric buses is because we had an opportunity through the Low-No grant, the last round of Low-No grants, to partner with one of the bus vendors. So we are currently a fully Gillig operation, and we had the opportunity. Gillig is coming online with their electric buses, and we're partnering with them in that process. And so the Low-No grant gave us the opportunity to get a large percentage of the funding for that. And then the Volkswagen settlement was available, and we were able to leverage some of that settlement. So on paper, it looks like these buses are going to cost us less than $6,000 total for 2 electric buses. We're really excited about that. And one of the opportunities for us is simply the fact that we are a municipal electric company as well, along with being gas and water and telecommunications. And so we're able to leverage our relationship with the local electric company and really figure out how to electrify a fleet. And we're going to use that as the local utility to encourage other fleets locally and hopefully statewide to consider electric as a future option for their fleets. So that's what's brought us to this point.
Thank you, Matt, for that background on City Utilities. We're going to turn it over to Dale and Chance now to give a little bit of a background on Metro Transit's opportunities that they saw with electric fleet. So Dale, if you want to take it away.
All right, thanks, Kim. Metro St. Louis is a multi-regional operation. We operate in Illinois and Missouri in the St. Louis area. We operate 408 buses. 123 paratransit vans, and 87 light rail cars. We operate about 21.7 million miles annually with the bus fleet. And we got into the electrification. We've been looking at this for quite some time as the battery technology advanced and moved forward. Really excited. We tested multiple OEMs in service on our routes. Actually, 4 different vehicles were tested at Metro. We did customer surveys while the buses were en route, and the riding public was just very excited about this new technology. I'm currently in Anniston, Alabama at the New Flyer plant. We're doing our commissioning on our very first 60-foot pilot Arctic battery electric. Should be in St. Louis in a few weeks. We have 14 of them on order total, should be at St. Louis by the end of this year. Infrastructure for those, it starts, I think in a week or two, Chance can confirm that. We're going to be installing depot chargers and en route chargers for these vehicles, sequential depot chargers and 150 kilowatt depot chargers along with 450 kilowatts en route charging systems. We also have 4 Gilligs on order for this year, delivery this year, and 6 more on order ready for next year. So by next year, the end of next year, we should have 24 battery electric vehicles on the property. And we're very excited to get this project moving forward. And that's all I have to say about where we're at. The battery technology has advanced so quickly in the last 5 years through automotive industry, and it's getting a really good foothold in transit. And even Tesla is testing heavy equipment with trucks and over the road. This is a very exciting time to be in transit, and I believe these projects will continue to be very successful as we move forward. And the internal combustion engine could be seeing the beginning of the end of its useful life.
Thank you. Chance, did you want to add anything before we jump in with questions?
Sure. I'll just give a quick overview. As Dale mentioned, I'm handling the charging infrastructure side of things for these buses. And when I got involved, it was time was of the essence already. I'll leave it at that. But I'll just give a quick overview of the approach we've taken on this. We've put out, it's technically not a design build contract. It was technically an RFP for construction with some design required. But it functions very similar to a design build delivery project. But by soliciting for construction, we were able to shorten our procurement window a little bit, lessen the reviews necessary. And we had 2 respondents to that, and actually New Flyer Infrastructure Solutions was the most qualified candidate. So New Flyer Infrastructure Solutions, obviously a division of the same company, New Flyer America that produces the buses, is actually installing the infrastructure for us. So it's a happy coincidence for us that New Flyer Infrastructure Solutions got that. So when we get into making these things work, we have one party responsible for it.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'm sure when you first put your toes into adding electric buses to your fleet, it wasn't a smooth ride out the gate, no pun intended. So what is the biggest challenge that both of your agencies or challenges that you have faced in adding electric buses to your fleet?
Well, I can speak for us. Our biggest challenge has been figuring out how to electrify our barn. When our barn is designed for about double the capacity of our buses in case we ever have future expansion. And it was designed with a radiant floor heat. And because of that, we cannot mount on the ground the pedestals for charging. So we're having to work with the vendor and the subcontractor to go overhead. That posed a problem early on with the initial subcontractor we had. They like to stylize their service, their product, and so it wasn't going to meet our needs or be able to be changed to meet our needs. So we asked for a second option, and they brought a more industrial subcontractor to the table that is less pretty, more industrial. And as soon as they brought that contractor to the table, our substation engineers in our electric department were like, well, yeah, we know that vendor. We know what they do. They provide a lot of the infrastructure in our substations and at our power plants. So it's a group that we're comfortable with. We are actually going to perform the install of all their equipment ourselves, but they're having to make a modification because it's going overhead. There's going to be indicator lights that will have to be moved to the bottom of their equipment so we can see that things are charging. One of the other, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Matt. No, go ahead and finish it.
So a couple of the other things regarding electric is once we get to a point, because it's going to impact our spare ratio, even though the FTA will allow us to go back up on our spare ratio, these are buses we're going to need available. And being the electric company, we are concerned with outages. If we ever had an outage that was on our electric system that kept us from being able to run routes because we didn't have electric available to charge our buses, it would be a bit of an issue for us in the community. So one of the things that we've had to consider is how do we provide a secondary feed to our barn? We're not going to just have one substation providing electric to our bus facility. We're going to have two. They're going to run one that serves as a backup to a local hospital. So a secondary feed in case of an electric outage is important in our charging structure. And then the other thing we're thinking long range, and we'll talk more about what our 5 or 10 year plan might look like, is a secondary site. Is there a place we can go that have secondary charging capabilities away from our barn that would actually be somewhere else on our electric system? And so those, our biggest challenge to date has been thinking about electrifying the barn for charging.
So a quick follow-up question to you, Matt, that has come in the chat box, but has being a utility, city utilities, been helpful in adopting electric buses?
It is really nice because we have a great relationship internally with all the departments. It's city utilities is set up by city charter to be separate from the city itself. And so everybody understands we get a lot of our funding just from the utility themselves. And so everybody has a stake in transit being successful in any endeavor we take. We also, as it was mentioned in one of the meetings yesterday, we realized that as things become more energy efficient, the load goes down. So people are vying to bring industry to their area. In Springfield, we recognize that electrifying fleets, we're a large transportation trucking area. The more we can get people to electrify their fleets and charge their vehicles on our system, it generates more load on our electric system. So that's helped us, and that will help them sell electrification of other fleets locally. So it's been really beneficial. Also, it makes it really easy to have those discussions about demand charges, how we meter our barn versus the radiant heat being on a separate meter from our electric charging. And then we can discuss some of the wind credits that we have at the utility, and potentially we could be a zero emission electric fleet if we use some of those wind credits. So it does, I will be honest, it makes it easier internally with the electric company to be part of them.
Good, thank you. So Dale and Chance, we do have some questions in the chat box, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to answer what has been the biggest challenge or challenges thus far to the St. Louis region adding electric buses to the fleet?
For us, one of the first things we had to establish was there a return on investment for the additional cost to go battery electric? So we had to do a lot of data mining in our system to, and I can talk about this a little more later. I saw there was a question about cost per mile, but we can go into that. But we had to establish a return on investment on this vehicle. Can we recoup the investment for battery electric during the life cycle of the bus? And the answer turned out to be yes. So the other challenge we had, we decided to deploy these vehicles at our Brentwood facility. Now, because the facility was set up better physically to accommodate the chargers, it was at one time housed CNG buses, so it had some features that our other facilities did not have, and we decided that would be the facility to deploy these vehicles. The problem with the Brentwood facility, it was on the edge of two grids, and the power was less than stable. Anytime there was a storm, we more often lost power at that garage. And as Matt alluded to, power is essential if you have a substantial amount of battery electric buses. So we partnered with Ameren, had lots of discussions with the power company. They had an issue with the grid. They knew it. And they actually came up and we donated property, and they built a substation directly on our property. We gave them the property, huge project for them. It's a win-win situation. We had a redundant power feed for the garage. We have enough power to expand into the future, and Ameren was able to stabilize their grid. So those were two of the big advantages, opportunities, and challenges that we had going into this.
So I'm going to follow up with this from a question from the chat box, but Dale or Chance, would the Gillig 40-foot battery electric buses be compatible with the new Flyer infrastructure charging both depot and en-route solutions? And what challenges or hurdles, if any, are needed to accommodate two OEMs on the same charging equipment?
So I'll speak to that because I've been handling that directly.
Okay.
And the short answer to that is we sure hope so. We are setting up our depot charging in the Brentwood garage. We're using ABB chargers, 150 kW ABB chargers. We're setting it up with sequential 2-to-1 dispenser ratios. And 14 of our initial chargers will be pairing a new Flyer with a Gillig. And we've got a charge management system for Mobility House that's going to be coming in, and we're going to set parameters in that. Our Gilligs, our 40-foot Gilligs, will only be charged in the depot. They will not utilize on-route charging, so it's only our 60-foot new Flyers that will utilize on-route charging. But all of Gillig, New Flyer, and ABB have indicated that it will be possible to charge these sequentially on the same charger. It's never been done before. To all those parties, that combination has never been actually implemented. So we're anticipating there's going to be a figure it out phase, but nobody sees any reason why it shouldn't work.
Okay. Well, you're going to be the pilot for everyone, Chance and Dale, it looks like. So Matt talked a little bit about what funding sources he is using for these electric vehicles, the Low-No grant, as well as the VW settlement. So what is Metro Transit using to fund this expansion of the fleet? Is there any funding category that you are using that's different than your normal procurement funding sources for other agencies maybe to be looking at?
Okay, yes, like Matt, Metro received Low-No grants in 2017, 2018, and in 2020.
Okay.
The articulated fleet, we had already planned through our vehicle replacement plan to replace the diesel articulated buses in St. Louis with battery electric Artic buses. That was the original plan. We had set aside normal procurement funding for the purchase. In 2017, we received a Low-No grant, which we started using quite a bit of that money towards infrastructure, depot chargers. We already had the Gilligs pre-planned to replace. We have our vehicle replacement schedule planned out for 15 years. So we know what we're going to need far into the future. It helps stabilize our capital needs and our operational costs when we do that. So what we're looking for with the other LONO grants that we received was the difference between the diesel and the cost of the battery electric bus. The NOLO grants helped us in 2018 purchase these 10 Gillig buses, the difference in the cost. And in 2020, we received a significant amount for the 6 that we have an order in 2021. And it also helped pay for a lot of the en-route charging infrastructure that Chance was talking about.
Okay, so since we're talking about costs of these vehicles and costs of the infrastructure, it's my understanding that the upfront cost for electric vehicles is much more than diesel vehicles, but what is the argument that the agencies are using over the lifetime of these vehicles? What would you be saving? And if you could address that a little bit for the other providers or stakeholders or communities who are in the audience who might be interested in going electric with their fleets.
Okay, for us, several years ago, we did data mining in our M5 system, and my group compared operational cost, it's all in cost per mile. Operational cost of a modern diesel bus throughout its life cycle is about 92 cents a mile. That includes, what I mean by a modern diesel bus, that is with a bus with emissions, DPF, DOC, SCRs. So this is an ISL 9 Cummins throughout the life cycle of the bus, operates parts and labor about 92 cents a mile. Diesel fuel at that time when we were doing the study, we were paying $2.38 a gallon. And we were getting about 4.98 miles per gallon on average in our fleet. So the cost to operate a diesel bus for us was at 56,000 miles a year was our average mileage per bus, was about $51,000 parts and labor and about 11,200 gallons of fuel. So the total cost to operate was $77,000. When we data mined the parts and labor for a battery electric bus, we made a lot of assumptions on brake life, but we eliminated all the costs for engine, transmission, and wear items that would not be applicable on a battery electric bus, and came up with a cost of 27 cents a mile. And at 56,000 miles, it's about $15,000 in parts and labor. It operates about 1/3 the cost of a diesel bus. And energy at the Brentwood facility at that time, we were paying 6.5 cents a kilowatt. So there's another $11,000 in energy savings over diesel fuel. So we assumed we could save at that time, with fuel costs at that time, energy costs at that time, just under $52,000 a year per bus. So our return on investment goal was $450,000 for a battery pack. That's pretty much the upcharge that the OEMs were telling us. So at the end of 12 years, we were trying to recoup $450,000 by parts and labor and energy savings. And we assume we can get that in about year 9.5.
Okay.
Well within the FTA mandated 12 years.
Okay. Matt, did you want to weigh in?
We don't have the breakdown by cost per mile. For us, it was an opportunity to get 2 buses and see what happens for the first couple of years and really compare that against our diesel fleet. We're expecting at least a very conservative number, 30% savings on maintenance a year per bus. And we're expecting at least $11,000 a year savings on maintenance and fuel. Now, we could actually make that look like a little bit bigger number too, being the electric company, but all things being equal and what the actual cost would be, we expect the electric buses to break even compared to a diesel in about 5.5 years for us. So we're really expecting a greater savings on maintenance. Such like Dale was alluding to, there's such a long time between the preventive maintenance that you need on those buses. So we're looking forward to that.
Okay. So there is a question that's come in, and I'm not sure either of you can answer this quite yet, except we had a pilot in St. Louis. So maybe Dale and Chance, you can answer this, but have you noted any impact from our weather here in Missouri, extreme summer and winter temperature, to battery life or the operation of these electric vehicles?
Yes. The problem, one of the issues and challenges with battery electric vehicles is heat. They operate wonderfully in southern climates, but in St. Louis and northern places, it takes a lot of energy to warm up a bus on the inside. So St. Louis, we're not exactly zero emission. We are putting diesel-fired heaters on the bus to keep our range where we need to be. So it's the primary heater is a diesel-fired heater with the battery, OEM battery heater, electric heater as a secondary. But the heat can take as much power as the actual propulsion system on a bus and cut nearly your range in half on a cold day with the electric heat. So that's why we decided to add the Pro heaters on the vehicles that we're purchasing.
Okay. Okay, great. Too bad we're not in a climate controlled environment, right? Wouldn't that make all your jobs so much easier?
Yeah, you don't need extra heaters in Miami, that's for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about what type of infrastructure changes needed to be made for both of you. You know, I think, Chance, you talked a little bit about a new, with help with Ameren on a substation next to your Brentwood garage, if I'm correct. But what other infrastructure changes do you have to make, Matt, for example, in only adding 2 vehicles? Is there infrastructure changes that you think that other agencies need to be aware of, what that looks like? And how far in advance did you plan those out?
That's a great question. Hindsight being 2020, if we could go back and do it, we just built the transit center down in our downtown area in Springfield. We built it in 2016. If we had thought ahead, we likely would have put charging capabilities in that facility, including solar on top of the weather protective areas of the platform. And looked for some en-route charging capabilities there, but we didn't even have electric on our radar in 2016, to be honest with you. So we would go back and do that. So if any of you are thinking about adding a transit center transfer station, I would consider that. And then for our barn, yes, for the two buses that we're going to be charging, we are thinking long-term. We're planning for a full fleet conversion to electric and what that looks like. So if we have to build a structure just outside our barn to house some of the electric, like pad mount transformers, anything like that typically sit outside, we're going to make sure that we have the capability to expand our system for a full fleet conversion there. We're also in the process of looking at some of our small fleet, like our cutaways for our paratransit service, and making sure that we'll have the charging capability for them as well, hoping that what we do, we are going to be using ABB. We're glad to hear that Metro is using ABB. Making sure that whatever we do with them, we'll be able to charge our small fleet, including things like pickups and SUVs that we use for our supervisors to respond to calls on the system. So we're going to make sure that everything is expandable and upgradable to those systems as well, but it's all going to be overhead.
Thank you. Dale and Chance, did you want to weigh in, also talk a little bit how your fleet is actually a bi-state fleet, and did you plan infrastructure on both sides of the river for your fleet, or is it only on the Missouri side, if you wanted to touch on that? You're on mute, Dale.
All right. Yeah,
That's
we're,
okay.
we're just deploying these on the Missouri side. The articulated buses are going to be operated only on our Grand Line, which is the highest densely populated line. Fortunately, the en-route chargers are going to all be put at one station. It's not, the depot chargers, of course, will operate out of the facility, but Illinois right now, there are no future plans to operate these electric buses in the Illinois facility. And
Okay.
yes, you should maybe talk a little bit about the en-route charging and the challenges that you faced up there.
Okay. Yeah, the on-route charging, we're putting in 3 450 kW chargers. We anticipate only charging 2 buses simultaneously, but we do have the capability to charge 3 buses simultaneously at that North Broadway stop, which is at the north end of the Grand Line. So we do have that capability if we end up in such a situation. You know, road construction, accidents, operations get a little bit out of whack. We might end up with 3 buses there that all need to be charged at the same time. Physical footprint has been the biggest challenge for us. And we actually, when we put out our solicitation, we asked our contractors to price both the regular mast mounted pantograph and also building an overhead gantry that would result in 1 less footing. And through some initial design and analysis, it was determined that the mast was really the best way to go, and also a little bit less vulnerable in that if the overhead steel gantry got hit, we'd have 3 chargers out of commission, whereas with the mast we have 3 individual targets instead of 1 target. So that helped us as well in that regard. But we're actually revamping our entire site, having to adjust curb lines a little bit, and we're making some other improvements to the site as well. You can see a rendering of the site here behind me. I'm standing in the middle of Broadway right now, if you will. But we've got a fenced equipment yard. There's obviously security concerns with that we're taking a very high level of review on the security aspect of things, installing security cameras and making sure from a SEPTED perspective that we're in a better position than we are now, really, at that site is our goal. And I will say, similar to Matt, in our depot, all of our chargers will be overhead as well. We aren't limited so much by there being conflicts underground, as we just thought that there would be less opportunity for a bus to come in contact with a dispenser if we put them overhead. So we've got coil systems in the rafters and a rope hanging down, and we'll pull down and plug into the side of the bus. And we actually have a mock-up that should be done, I believe, the end of next week. One of the things we've been looking at is having that rope hanging down between drive lanes and the cable hanging down between drive lanes, and making sure we're not in a situation where we're going to hook it on a mirror as we're pulling buses through, making sure we don't have things in the way of our cleaning crews as they're moving back and forth between buses at night. And obviously the operational need of being able to pull the buses in, get them charged, and pull the buses at the front of the lane out without having buses that are trapped behind that need to go out has been a huge focus for us. So we're looking at that, as well as our ability to charge off peak as much as possible, trying to push our demand off peak. And it's actually been a fun little dance to figure out how to set up our dispensers and how to configure things so that for our initial fleet, and as our fleet expands, we can add dispensers to what will be our existing chargers, and still end up with something that operationally should work for us.
Great. So I apologize. I missed a question in the chat, going back to what the conversation we had right before this one about having both the New Flyer and the Gillick and how they're responding to the weather. Is the heating approach going to be the same for both your New Flyer and your Gillick vehicles in St. Louis? You're on mute.
I'll just leave it on. So yes,
Okay.
we're going to use pro heaters on both the buses, the New Flyers and the Gilligs, to ensure we have ample heat and comfort, because St. Louis can get hot and cold in the same day, and we would like to be able to keep it, the bus at a comfortable temperature, at even down to plus 10 degrees.
Okay. Okay, great. So there is one more question directed at Metro, and I think that you have touched on it a little bit, but St. Louis Metro has a great maintenance cost tracking program. So what are your expectations with regards to the maintenance cost savings going to battery electric buses versus your diesel fleet?
Again, we're looking at parts and labor at 27 cents a mile for the battery electric vehicle, opposed to 92 cents a mile for the diesel bus. Energy savings were at 6.5 cents a kilowatt for electricity. And like I said, at the time we did, diesel fuel was $2.38. So the difference is just under $52,000 a year for.
Chance, I think we lost Dale for a moment. Okay, we will move on and hope that Dale comes back to life on our Zoom call. So the next question is, where do you see your fleet at your agencies in the next 5 years or 10 years? We're seeing a lot of agencies just starting to dip their toes into the electric fleet market. So where do you see your agencies in the next 5 years, 10 years, or have you even thought that far out with regards to adding electric vehicles to the fleet? Matt, I'll pitch it to you first since we lost Dale, and then Chance will hand it off to you.
Sure. So in 5 years, we have tentatively started budgeting a full electric replacement beginning in budget year 2024. We're going to give the two electric buses, a good run and make sure that we're wholeheartedly going to go to electric buses. So we're scheduling in 2024 to start replacing our whole fleet, 2 buses at a time across 12 years. So theoretically by 2035, we should be fully electric, but that's a budgetary number. We functionally are planning on going 50%, depending on how battery life is and range on a charge is. Currently, we don't expect to be able to run one bus for a whole 17-hour day on our system. We have 3 out buses, and if we have to do that, we can't have a fleet that's fully electric. But we'll make that decision as we get closer. But we're going to have the budget built in for that, and who knows what happens with competitive grants, and if we can apply for those and win some of those, we may do a faster replacement. But then, but by 2036, if budget holds, we should be a fully electric system.
Okay, great. So Dale, welcome back. So the question to both you and Chance, we love technology. I know, I just love it.
I got a note that my internet connection was weak and everybody was gone.
No problem. Welcome back. So the question that we just pitched to Matt and now to both yourself and Chance is, where do you see your fleet at your agencies in the next 5 years, 10 years, or have you looked that far out? What is your plan with adding electric vehicles to the fleet?
Like I said earlier, by the end of next year, we should have 24 battery electric vehicles in the fleet. I think that depends on available capital money, and we will, of course, continue to apply for low-no grants to pay for the difference. We already have a vehicle replacement plan scheduled, but we will rely heavily on additional grant funding if we were going to pay the difference between diesel and battery electric. I anticipate this project being extremely successful, and us moving forward with battery electric vehicles in the future. 5 years from now, I really can't quantify and put a number on how many we would have, but we're definitely looking at continuing to grow the fleet.
Great. Okay. So this question I think is really important for agencies who are maybe also just getting into this conversation, but what is the number one lesson learned that other agencies, other stakeholders, other communities who are thinking of adding electric vehicles to their fleets, what is the number one lesson learned all three of you have experienced so far that you think will help other groups?
I think for us, our lesson learned so far is if something doesn't work, change it. Influence that. If the product isn't right, if the vendor isn't right, if the location isn't right, make sure get what you need out of your project. And that's one of the things we've been able to exercise, and we've been able to at the utility be able to do that graciously. And it's all because of our relationship with Gillig. We didn't just, our first vendor, we didn't just end all ties with them. We were actually able to leverage our initial relationship with that provider to do some small fleet work that the utility needed done out in the community and on our small fleet at the utility as we start putting electric there. So be willing to change something if you need to.
Okay, great. Dale and Chance?
Yeah, I agree with Matt. Be very flexible in your planning, but lots of planning. And for us, and Chance would definitely agree, start your infrastructure project first. Once you've committed to battery electric, the infrastructure, lead times, and things like that are much more challenging. Once you get a bus contract, they can give you a production schedule and you know when the buses are coming. Infrastructure, not so easy for Chance. And I tip my hat to him to get, he had a late start on this, and it looks like this is going to come through in a great time. So planning infrastructure for us would be a recommendation for sure. Even after you decide to go with battery electric equipment, get your infrastructure ready and moving and in place first.
Chance, did you want to jump in about the need for patience?
Well, patience is a virtue, of course. But yeah, as Dale said, that's key. It's common sense, but when you're developing your site plans, check out all your easements and make sure your property rights and everything are good to go. I actually had a call about 45 minutes ago clearing up an easement issue that we've been concerned about for a number of weeks now. At least it's an indication now is that it's clear. I got to follow up on that, but make sure your underground utility easements and things like that aren't going to conflict with what you're trying to do. But the other thing I'll add that I've found to be very helpful, we have an industry consultant in Center's CTE, Center for
Transportation Excellence.
Transportation and the Environment. There you go. And we've utilized CTE in a number of different ways. Obviously, Dale had them involved in the planning process early on, but they've helped us write a scope for our construction contract, and they're staying on board as kind of our third-party professional expert in helping us validate assumptions and making sure we ask the right questions. And I have found that to be very beneficial, having someone from a third-party perspective to kind of fact-check things for us.
Great. I think those are all great lessons learned. I also want to, I'm going to offer this up, but what we have found through the MPTA on a regular basis is that a system that may have already gone through a process, usually there's someone at that site who's willing to talk to another provider about what were the obstacles, what were the opportunities and challenges if someone else is starting to go through this process. So I would offer up, if you're ever thinking about this or want to do this, feel free to reach out to the MPTA and we can connect you to some of these, what we like to say, Missouri resident experts now, because they've already gone through a lot of the hoops and hurdles, and you might be able to learn something and save yourself time, your patience, and other things by knowing things in advance, by working with people who have already done it in the state of Missouri. So that is one thing that we can offer through the MPTA. If you have questions about adding electric vehicles to your fleet and you can't find a contact, let us know. We're happy to connect you with some of the resident experts in Missouri. I don't see any other questions in the chat box. Thank you, John, who said this has been a great discussion. So thank you so much to our panelists. You have provided some really good information for people with regards to adding electric vehicles to their fleets. Is there anything else that any of you wanted to add before we close this workshop this morning?
Kim, I might add that I think that we have an opportunity as transit agencies and partners to leverage our relationships, not just with our other agencies in the state, but also with, and I know I sit from a seat of privilege here in Springfield where we are part of the electric company, but leverage those relationships at those agencies, because we have the opportunity to do something and help them as they're trying to find their future. And I think we should leverage those things. And also, you touched on having people that are experts. We're still in the middle of our project, but we do have people that are willing from our electric department. Brandy, our grants analyst, Brandy Fisher, who got our grants for us competitively, has done a great job. She's been feeding me information during this. And I appreciate that. She's willing to answer questions. So if anybody has any questions for us, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to try to put you in touch with somebody that can help you.
Any last words, Dale or Chance, before we wrap up this morning?
Yeah, the same thing in St. Louis. We've kind of been through the purchasing part, and Chance has went through the minefield of infrastructure planning and still has challenges to go. Up to this point, we've gained a lot of knowledge about battery electric buses and do's and don'ts, and we would be more than willing to share our experiences with anyone. Like I said, by the end of this year, we'll have them on property in service. We're planning training, first responder training throughout the region also. We're just going to keep gaining knowledge about this thing, and we'll be happy to share with anyone and make time to have discussions with anyone if they're wanting to go the same direction, for sure.
So Dale and Chance, I'm just going to throw this out there, but next year's conference is supposed to be in St. Louis, September 7th through the 9th. So if you could maybe allocate a little time to offer tours of your facilities, no pressure. There's only 56 people on this call, but we would love to be able to actually let people see your facilities in St. Louis next year and ride on some of the electric buses that have been added to the fleet, if that's possible.
Absolutely, we can make that happen.
See, we got that recorded too. So thank you very much to our panelists today. Thank you for all of you who have stayed tuned through this workshop. Our next one will start in about 27 minutes. I think it's at 11 a.m. So thank you again. It is recorded and will be on the website in the next couple of days if anyone is interested, mopublictransit.org. And thank you again for all of your information, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dale, it's nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you too, Matt. We'll have to stay in touch and see how things work out.
Absolutely look forward to getting up there and seeing your system when we get freedom to move about.